6 inside room 111. 5 were on the ground, 1 was in the rifle. There were 32 magazines outside the school, but on school property. 1 just outside the school building and 31 in the suspect's backpack that he did not take into the classrooms with him. There was 15 magazines at the crash site. There were 2 magazines at the suspect's residence for a total of 60 magazines. He had purchased and had a total of 1,657 total rounds of ammunition. 315 of those rounds were inside the school. 142 of those were spent cartridges. 173 were live rounds. 922 were outside of the school, but on school property. 22 of those were spent cartridges. 900 were live rounds. 422 were at the crash site. 22 were spent cartridges. 420 of those were live rounds. There's 35 spent law enforcement cartridges total in the school. 8 of those were in the hallway. 27 were inside the classroom. 111 where the suspect was killed. I had mentioned that I was going to go over quickly a digital timeline. One of the things we talked about early, and I want to correct something that was said early on in the investigation, is that he posted, on Facebook publicly that he was going to kill that he was going to shoot his grandmother, and secondly after that he he had shot her, and then third that he was going to go shoot up a school. That did not happen. It was actually on a message. It was a Facebook application, messenger application to somebody else that he had a conversation with. We know that through his digital media footprint, and I'll just do it by date time, that Ramos asked his sister to help him buy a gun. She flatly refused. That was in September of 21. I'll avoid some of these and get to he had Instagram, a 4-group chat, and it was discussed that Ramos being a school shooter. That was on February 28th of 2022. On March 1st of 2022, there was an Instagram he had with 4 people. It was a chat. He discussed him buying a gun. On March 3rd, 2022, there was another 4-person chat. Quotations, word on the street is you are buying a gun. Ramos replied, just bought something. RN. On March 14th, and there's an Instagram posting by the subject, in quotations, 10 more days. A user replied, are you going to shoot up school or something? The subject replied, no, and stop asking dumb questions and you'll see. I know you have many questions, and I've agreed to stay as long as we can to answer as many of those questions that we can. If I can't answer it because we don't know definitively right now, I'll simply say that. And it continues to be a preliminary investigation. There's, literally, certainly over hundreds of interviews have been conducted, will continue to be conducted, and there's thousands of leads that are being pursued, not consecutively, but concurrently, and thanks to our federal and local partners. And I do want to mention behind me, we've got the FBI Special Agent in charge. We also have an ATF Special Agent in charge, or ASAC, and of course, who else? What I got behind? Okay, Texas Rangers. If there's any specifics that I haven't covered that I might need their particular support on. I do want to cover one thing quickly though before I go to questions, and that's some of the questions that we have already received. And one of those is going around now that in fact the subject had been one of the 2 arrested by the Texas Rangers and the local police back in 2018. That's not the case. He was not one of the individuals. In fact, we have found no links, associations, and relationships in that investigation. Clearly it was a threat. It was back in 2018. The 2 juveniles were charged was attempted or conspiracy to commit capital murder. There's no question that we thought, and we had evidence, and certainly the district attorney agreed, that these juveniles, one 13, one 14 years old, was a threat to Uvalde. And there was a discussion at that time, even the senior year of the one that was 14 years old, which would make it 2022. However, that was not the subject. Questions? Huh? Okay. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, one thing I want to say. One thing I failed to say is that when we're done, we have Tony Pena with us. He's going to translate into Spanish. Okay, what the answers and the questions are afterwards. Yeah.
Thank you for doing this, and I do hope you stay here and take as many questions as possible. You say there were 19 officers gathered in the hallway or somewhere. What efforts were made to try and break through that door? You say it was locked. What efforts were the officers making to try and break through either that door or another door, get inside that classroom?
None at that time.
Why?
The on-scene commander at the time believed that it had transitioned from an active shooter to a barricaded subject.
Sir, you have people who are alive, children who are calling 911 saying, please send the police. They are alive. In that classroom, there are lives that are at risk.
Hey, we're well aware of that.
Right,
Yeah.
but why was this decision made not to go in and rescue these children?
Again, the on-scene commander considered it a barricaded subject and that there was time and there were no more children at risk. Obviously, based upon the information we have, there were children in that classroom that were at risk, and it was, in fact, still an active shooter situation and not a barricaded subject. Yeah. The question simply is this: there was a 40-minute gap, and if the 911 operators were aware that children were alive in that classroom, why weren't officers notified of that? And if that's the case, why didn't they take action? That's the question. And again, I'll go back to the answer for right now, is that it was considered. Okay, the decision was made on the scene. I wasn't there, but at the same point in time, a decision was made that this was a barricaded subject situation. There was time to retrieve the keys and wait for a tactical team with the equipment to go ahead and breach the door and take on the subject at that point. That was the decision, that was the thought process at that particular point in time.